The Nazi regime, upon taking power in the early 1930s, drafted a set of laws known as the Nuremberg Laws. Those laws were used to, they had another name, which I think gives away what their purpose is, the law for the protection of German purity and German blood. So I think you get the idea.
Purity, huh? Not,
Yes.
not very ambiguous.
No. The Nazis were not for ambiguity or euphemisms. And in drafting those laws, which went into effect in 1935, they very much relied on, and said so openly, American Jim Crow laws.
Mm-hmm.
They carefully studied them. In particular, there were three or so aspects that they focused on. One was so-called anti-miscegenation laws. Now, the very word miscegenation is an invented word that the U.S. came up with, invented in the North, by the way, not the South, that the U.S. came up with to denote interracial marriage. It's just a fancy way of saying we don't want blacks and whites to intermarry. The other aspect that they studied was segregation. The whole Jim Crow system was based on enforced legal segregation and subordination of the minority, in this case, the black minority. So they studied that very carefully to see how they could apply it to Germany. And the third aspect was, how do you define immigration and how do you define citizenship? They looked at the 1924 U.S. Immigration Act, which set racial quotas and barred citizenship for many non-white immigrants. And this was seen by the Nazis as something to emulate when they were working out the Nuremberg Laws. The Nuremberg Laws were a set of laws that were meant to legally codify the second-class and subordinate status of, first and foremost, Jews, but also other groups that were considered, to use the German term Untermenschen, subhuman, by the Nazis, such as the Roma and other peoples who were in Germany. So to give you an example, the Nazi Handbook for Law and Legislation, that's the name of the book, which was a guide for Nazi policymakers, held up the American system as an example, stating in 1936, quote, "The United States of America have laws for the protection of the blood that we as Nazis can only envy."
Wow.
Close quote.
That's not a great legacy to have.
Well, but it is America's legacy.